Hello everyone. In this section of Module 1, we're going to be doing an extension of what we did in the last assignment, which we're looking at, which was getting started on the Earth Timeline project. Now, in the previous discussion, I gave you some information about what I wanted you to do and how to produce the timeline, as well as a few assignments for you to look at, viewing assignments and reading assignments, so that you could get information to start putting on your timeline. Now, what I really gave you was information to allow you to go up to just about the middle of the Paleozoic. Now, Professor Lizzie Scambuluri's lecture, that 45-minute lecture you looked at, takes you up to the Silurian period of the Paleozoic, which is just about 400 million years ago. And what you're looking at is sort of the evolution of, bony fishes up into that point. But once we get into Devonian, a certain intrepid fish will begin to make its journey on shore, and we'll get the colonization of land and the first vertebrates on land. So instead of looking at her lecture number 2, which she has, which adjoins it, because if you can see it stopped pretty dead at the Silurian, I think a better way to sort of move through now is to look at a film titled Your Inner Fish. Now, what's important about this is that many of you, if you're taking lecture classes here or have already had a lecture class or in one right now, most likely you're going to see that video during those courses too. But you'll be looking at it for different reasons. Now, for the context of this course, what we're going to be doing is observing this video to fish information for your timeline. So think about that, because this stuff in module number 1 is not something you're going to see on, on a quiz. I hope everybody knows that. No quizzes on this. You're not trying to memorize stuff. You're trying to extract relevant, good information, right, to place on your timeline. So that's the way we're going to visually look or track this film that you're watching to understand the flow of life history, the relevant species that are going to be discussed. And so you can grab those and place those on your timeline. So it's a different way of sort of looking for them because there's an actual purpose for it versus memorization. All right. Now, additionally, what we have in this section is very much like what I did the last time. So in the last assignment, I had you look at a reference paper, and that was by Lisa Uri. And the purpose of that was to get some more information on the evolution of vertebrates from chordates, things without a vertebra, without a bony spine, to the origin of things that have a bony spine, particularly the marine organisms that do. And she gives a pretty good explanation in a fairly short period of time with good examples, things that you can just grab right there and place them right in your timeline. And that was really the purpose that I put that reference up there for you. And then, of course, I wanted you to finish, up to page 180 of the story of Earth. And if you haven't done that at this point, we'll keep reading to try to keep catching up with that. Okay, now where we're at on this section, we're looking at the inner fish, is that the inner fish really begins to discuss the process of fossils. Well, it begins with the idea of fossils more concretely. But what the narrator, Neil Shubin, in this film doesn't do is explain what fossils are and how they're created, right? How a biological organism can be changed into stone or a fossilization imprint left. And I think a good thing to do would be to look at some information so you understand process of fossilization, because it'll put that film in a greater context for you, right? A higher resolution. So what I'd like you to do is first watch a film called The Fossilization Process. This is a short mini lecture. It'll explain how fossils are created, what information they can tell us. And once you sort of understand that, then you can go in and watch your inner fish. And it'll also help you, I think, to a great degree of refining and putting some important information on your timeline too. Now, again, for those of you who are going to be watching this, remember, this stuff is not going to be on an exam somewhere. That's not the purpose of it. The purpose of all this information here is just for you to build a better timeline. Okay, and that's the way I sort of set off the first part of all my laboratory courses, to sort of take the pressure off you from all this sort of quizzes and all this kind of stuff that's out there, and just allow you to breathe information in to help you produce a better project. All right. Now, like in the last section when we introduced the timeline for the first time, I also have a reference reading down there. Okay, so the reference reading is called Vertebrate Paleontology and Evolution, and that's by Robert Carroll. Okay, here's the thing about this book. Robert L. Carroll wrote the de facto book on vertebrate paleontology and evolution. It is the completeness of all completeness. The thing about this really isn't a course in vertebrate paleontology. I'm trying to give you some background in it so you can understand human evolution. This book is not to be read. It's a 750-page tome. What that book is there for you is reference. You can get a collection of organisms for your timeline. It gives you a place to shop. I mean, you can just pick up go through this book and literally cut and paste the stuff out of there right on the timeline that you want. And close by, you'll see all the not only the illustration but the annotations on the importance of these fossil finds, right? So that's really what you want to do too, is utilize this as a reference source. And I'm trying to do that so you don't have to go searching outside of this class for reference books, because that takes way too much time. And a lot of times you don't know which ones are the quality ones. This was the quality one, okay? So not to read, but once you've done all the lectures so far, especially by Lizzie Stramblu's lecture, you should know a little bit about the early formation of vertebrates. So when you look through this vertebrate paleontology guide book, you can actually pull the relevant examples that you want. Okay. Now, lastly, concerning fossilization. The Fossil Primates book, the one that I placed that was sort of optional reading for you, and it's a darn good book. Well, I've outlined for those of you who have that book, fossils and fossilization is in chapter 3. So chapter 3 of that is a really, really good source for understanding fossils and fossilization. All right. I don't think you'll be at a super disadvantage without it. But here's the thing, and the reason that I say not disadvantaged, since there isn't going to be any tests or exam questions on this, you're not going to be at a disadvantage if you don't have, that book for it. This video lecture should be okay. I think for more of an advanced understanding, I think having a look at that chapter 3 will really help you. And particularly, the way that I view courses is that, there will be students among you who are going to be doing something like this for a living. Gosh, no, probably not anthropology, but something in the historical sciences, right? Field geology, paleontology, hydrogeology, anything that really requires the looking at ancient life. You need to have more of an advanced look. And for those students, I wanted to have a reading source for you. You're going to try to get more out of this class, right? And for those of you that are not, you have all sorts of like a business major, this major, that economics. This is just one of those courses that you just have to get through, and I'm giving you the minimal stuff just by looking at those videos, and it won't penalize you grade-wise if you don't read the heavy stuff like fossil primates. So that's sort of my logic behind this. All right, so our next steps, of course, is to get through these videos. Of course, when you watch your inner fish, make sure that you're taking notes on particularly the vertebrate transitions from, sea to land, which species those were, the class of species, and the antecedents, what's down the line, what went on through the transitional process, so you'll know what to place on your timeline. That is the central riff. The species I was talking about you need to dig them right out of your inner fish. That's a key piece of information. All right, so after you finish that, we're going to be moving away from the timeline project for a while. I'd like to hit something hard, back off, and switch gears for a little bit. So what we're going to be switching gears to is cellular and molecular evolution, the DNA. And we'll be talking a little bit about natural selection too. And by the time we get into that, that's pretty much when your lecture courses are going to be dovetailing into it also. And I want to be able to give you, some good hands-on practice and working with the cellular and molecular problems, and we're working out a workbook for that. So it will help your lecture grades and whatever lecture courses you've had out there. And of course, for those of you who have already had a lecture course, taking those lecture courses will also help you with that cellular and molecular stuff. Additionally, when you think about the cellular and molecular stuff, we're not going to take it at the advanced level that you're going to find in a cellular and molecular biology class. Being an anthropology class, I'm not going to do that to you. I just want the basic understanding. You're just going to just the basic understanding, sort of allow you to see how evolution actually works on a molecular level. So for those of you who don't get too frightened because there's like real science coming up, we're not going to hit it at that sort of super science or biology sort of class level, at least not in this course. Okay, so finish this stuff up. By now, you should be viewing this on about day 7 to day 10. That's where you should be at about this point, by the way, just to let you know where you're on track, so that you can reserve, the next 2 weeks or so, maybe 3 weeks or so, to get through Module 2, and finally to the very first quiz that you're going to have, and that is going to be on September 24th, exactly 1 month after the course begins. All right, once again, any questions, any problems, always hit me up by voice, text, email, whatever you need. Additionally, at this point, many of you are starting to produce your timelines. It's a good time to consult with me if you want. I mean, you can send me what you have. I mean, I'm not going to give you a grade on it, but I can tell you some things that I might want you to have in it, things you might want to think about. So this is a good time to sort of start communicating with me about your ideas. So it'll give you some confidence, and it'll also allow me to help you, I think, achieve your goals, whatever grade-wise it is. I mean, obviously, I'm not going to be able to make the timelines for you, but if you're a person that says, Mercer, I absolutely have to have an A in this class, well, I'm going to tell you deficiencies in everything which I see and allow you to run and produce something better. I mean, I only think that's fair to you, but the only way that is actually fair to both of us is that if we collaborate on these things and you're not afraid to reach out and show me the work that you've got. Okay, so let's get to work on this stuff, and I'll be talking to you guys later.